I looked down at my phone and saw the notification from my smart camera app. Notification, movement detected in living room. I swiped it off and went back to work. I worked medical coding on the late night shift, and the cameras have been a pain in the ass since I installed them. My wife and I put them in to keep an eye on our youngest, who likes to sleepwalk, and our oldest, who likes to slip out after curfew. In reality, however, it's been recording the antics of our two cats after everyone goes to bed. I spent all of last week checking the cameras every time something popped up. Now I've become kind of numb to it. I remember the first night I started getting warnings about it. My phone had buzzed. It immediately opened it to check the camera feed. When I saw that my youngest sleepwalks, what I mean is that he plays hide and seek in his sleep. My wife and I have woken up in the morning to find his bed empty, and sometimes he's in the living room on the couch, sometimes he's in the storage shed by the pool. 2 weeks ago, he was in the front yard asleep in his playset. The officer who found him was not amused, since we had called them after tearing up the house and being unable to find him. And that was when my wife had ordered the cameras. We gotten 3, one for the living room, one for his bedroom, one for our bedroom, where he sometimes sleeps. They were pretty neat. They were connected to an app, and you could see everything in a 180-degree angle in front of it. And when something moved past a specific time, you get a notification to let you know to check the app. It all seemed kind of Orwellian, having cameras throughout the house, but I tried to ignore them as I went about my day. My wife checked them habitually, even when we weren't asleep, and she had discovered that you could talk through them if you weren't home. Sometimes they annoyed me to no end. I looked down at the phone and silenced the notification again. At night, I checked the notifications to make sure my youngest wasn't sleepwalking. Last week, I checked the notifications religiously. I wanted to see if he was going so I could call my wife and warn her that he was out of bed. Kind of wanted to catch my oldest sneaking out too, just so I could scare him by yelling through the speakers. 2 new notifications. I looked down and silenced them again. That close together, it was always the cats playing in the living room. The first night, I got 10 notifications within about 3 hours. I checked every one, checking to see what had set the cameras off. The first notification proved to be nothing. The camera moved to the movements position, but no one was there. The second, one of the cats had jumped onto the couch. By the third, I was sure this would be one where something happened. I pulled it up and nearly gave my coworker a heart attack. There was a face staring right at the camera, staring back at me through the lens. I dropped the phone and I jumped back a little, nearly upsetting my chair. When I went to look at it again, though, I had to laugh. I realized my mistake. My face belonged to Oscar, one of our cats, and he was sniffing at the lens curiously. I started to laugh. I think my coworker's blood pressure probably normalized again. By the second night, I think I was already beginning to understand how this would be. The second night had 7 notifications, all cat-related. Oscar jumping from the couch to the chair, Chester, our other cat, getting a drink, the 2 of them playing in the wee hours of the morning. There was a rather funny bit where Chester fell asleep and rolled off the back of the couch, but it was becoming a little annoying at that point. Notification, movement detected in master bedroom. Notification, movement detected in son's room. I looked at the notification, finger floating over the button that would show me what was going on, but I ignored it instead. My son had likely left his room and gone to my bedroom. He did that sometimes. And it would have certainly set the cameras off. I went back to work, trying to put it out of my mind. The next 2 nights last week had been the most infuriating. The cats had zoomed around the living room, fighting and playing. The camera pinged my phone every few minutes, roving from side to side as it tried to follow their antics. That was the first night I ignored the notifications. I was just... It was cats, after all. I had work to do. Notification. Movement detected in living room. I just barely even reached to silence the phone when another came up. Notification. Movement detected in living room. Movement in living room. Movement in living room. I made a disgusted sound and silenced my phone. I had work to do. I didn't have time to watch cats play. I heard the phone vibrating for the next hour, telling me how they're motion detected in the living room, motion detected in bedroom, and then back to the living room again. Clearly my son had left the bedroom doors open and the cats had extended their play to our bedrooms. And they were probably driving my wife nuts, but if she had enough of it, I guess she'd get up, she'd close the door. I was quickly getting tired of this. The constant reminders were driving me crazy. I was falling behind on my coding. It had to be cats again. They were getting out of hand. I couldn't spend every night like this. Maybe if I yelled at them through the speaker, they would move off or settle. It probably wouldn't amount to anything, but if nothing else, give me a laugh. I brought up the camera menu and I found the display that was connected to the living room. The hourglass spun as it loaded, and finally, I could see my living room in a soupy translucence of the night vision camera. In the dim glow, I saw the source of the movement. Their hand, fiddling with the knob cover that we kept on to hinder my youngest, was near the door. It was someone in a dark hoodie, their back to the camera. I felt a flash of anger, so it hadn't been the cats after all. My teenage son was attempting to leave in the middle of the night to God knows where. I couldn't believe it. How many times had we had this discussion? How many times had we told him that curfews were for a reason, and now he was bothering me at work because he wanted to go smoke with his asshole friends? Well, I put a scare in him.
Get your ass back to bed, and don't you dare let me catch you up again,
I shouted as loud as I could. When the figure didn't immediately act terrified and have a minor heart attack, I knew something was wrong. My son fancies himself a bit of a badass, but he'd easily startled when it comes to loud noises. The figure didn't act surprised in the least bit. He just stood by the door, still as a statue, and I could almost believe that the camera had frozen. I stared at them through the camera for what felt like hours before they turned and began to walk towards the fireplace where I'd set up the housing for the device. They were wearing a mask, something like a rubber animal mask that was difficult to see with the hood pulled up. As they got closer, walking slowly as they tried to get a better look at the camera, I could see the long snout of a pig as it looked from the wide black mouth of the hoodie. He came right up to the camera, the eye holes blocking some of his ability to see. I suppose, and he just stared into the little glass eye. He was still long enough for me to think that I had lost signal again, and then he swung whatever was in his hand at the camera. I jumped back in surprise. The feed went dead, and I was on my phone to the police before the notification dinged again. Living room camera disabled. I'm in a little room now, one they usually assign for people under interrogation. I don't honestly know what to do. The police have gone to my house, but I already know what they're going to do. I reviewed the alerts that I received, and the screen grabs telling a tale that make my blood run cold. If I had taken them seriously, everything could have gone very differently. If I had just checked the cameras, I could have warned them. The intruder came in around 11:30, just as the first notification came through. I watched him walk through the living room, Chester walking up the couch to sniff at him curiously as he looked around. Chester was always a little too curious for his own good. And it was his downfall then. The second notification had been the intruder as he stopped and looked at Chester, turning his head weirdly like a robot trying to loosen a stuck hinge. The third bing had let me know the intruder had killed him with a crowbar before heading to the back of the house. The next two bings had been Oscar going to inspect the body of his dead friend. The man had proceeded to the bedroom that I share with my wife then. At first, he just stood there watching her sleep, cocking his head to that odd way that I was beginning to think some sort of a tick. This was when my youngest, probably after hearing some noise, left his room and headed to our bedroom. The next notification was about 20-second shots of the man standing over my wife. He had triggered the camera when he swung the crowbar down onto her face, bludgeoning her to death with a dozen sharp strikes. I could see, even in the dim light, how the pillow she sleeps with over her head turned red as he turned her skull into pulp. I could also see in the corner of the room my son standing in the doorway, watching all this go down. My heart leapt when I saw him. Was I about to watch him die as well? I couldn't imagine how scared he must be. He was 4 years old, watching his mother being brutally murdered by a man in a pig mask who had seemingly stepped out of a nightmare. I expected him to cry out, to scream in terror. For some reason, though, all he did was move as quietly as he could into the living room. That had been the notification, after all. The very next one had been the intruder sticking his head into my son's room, tilting his head as he looked for him. Then he triggered the camera again when he moved to the living room. That was the second most nerve-wracking time. I could clearly see my son crouching behind the couch, knees to his chest as tears ran down his face. I was crying by then myself. He must have been so scared. As the intruder came into the living room, I knew this would be when I watched him die too. And the intruder should have been able to see the top of his head. The intruder should have been able to clearly see him crouch there, or hear his quiet sobbing, and Oscar's body could still be seen across the back of the couch. But the other was nowhere to be seen. It was just the intruder and my son alone. When he stopped behind the couch, looking around as the crowbar dripped messily, I held my breath. But then he turned, and he left instead. The next notification had been to show me the intruder leaving to return to the back of the house. The one after that, the most heartbreaking, was my 4-year-old son dragging himself by sheer will to the cabinet under the sink and closing himself in. 2 of the next 3 reminders had been Oscar, probably running to hide too as he zoomed towards the laundry room. If my son was making noise under the sink, I didn't hear it on the camera. If the man had killed my oldest son, I wouldn't know until the cops told me. The next notification had been when I was aware of the intruder, when I had screamed at him to get his ass back to bed. The last notification was when he destroyed the camera. I say last because when I started writing this down, hoping that writing it down would help me keep it clear in my mind, it was the last notification. I got another notification about 30 seconds ago, notification I didn't know what to do with. The cops had been there, of course. They called, they told me they searched the house, they found my wife and my oldest son dead in their beds. Of my youngest, there's no sign, but they didn't find the intruder either. They believe this meant he left. The front door had been open. They believe that they may have taken my son. They're going to start a search immediately, but I don't know what good it will do. We'll leave a few cops to watch the residence, but we want to get people on there as soon as possible. I got a notification from the camera in my bedroom just after hanging up the phone. Notification, motion detected in master bedroom. I pulled it up and I couldn't breathe for a few seconds. He was holding a sign in one hand and the limp body of my youngest in the other. The dark eyes of his pig mask stared across the miles and saw me as I sat here in this uncomfortable plastic chair. My son didn't look harmed, but he wasn't moving. And he's always moving. I had already lost so much already. I was truly afraid of losing him too. The sign read, "Tell the cops to leave if you ever want to see your son alive again." Hey there, kids. It's me, MrCreepyPasta. I just wanted to say thank you so much for listening to tonight's story or watching tonight's video. I appreciate it. As always, I cannot thank you enough for always being here. And if you guys would like to see more or hear more, then I'd appreciate it if you click that subscribe button. Or if you're listening on the podcast, then click the follow button. You guys like words, right? I speak words. You guys hear words. Also, did you know you can read words? They put a lot of words into things called books. And I have 2 of those on Amazon. Mr. Creepypasta's Creepypasta collection. Volumes 1 and Volume 2 are available now on Amazon, if you give them a search, or you could just scroll down to the description. And as always, I want to give a big thank you to all you guys who support on Patreon, patreon.com/MrCreepyPasta, especially Jacob Schaefer, Jay, Zach, Jordan Alexander Sanchez, Lando Higuchi, Bobby Karman, Tristain Pelton, Chase Burnett, Diana Kraus, Katrina Beisel, Kayden the Spooky Boy, Zane Nightshade, MyBodySoundsLikeRiceKrispys, AshWood, Lord of the Weebs, Miss Xandra, MrUnsettlingSpaghetti, Eurogore, Tsuji Campbell, Marco Takes Dabs 420, Stricken, Azurine Fox, Robert White, Andreas Garza, Snails Burnett, Legit Quad Feed, Fried Chicken 12, James Bruce, Chris Levin, Freddy Krueger, Ty Nanny, Justin Johnson, 1-800-Nightmare, Unknown Nobody, Michael Scarborough, Jason Wilson, Infernal One, James Lowe, Lisa Cottrell, Jimbo the Hutt, Caspian, Jordan Nels, Hades' Nephew, Tater Chip, Acid System, Prozac and Pancake Appreciation Society, Brian Arce, Cryptic Nightmares, Brennan Wright, Someone You Love, S-Man, Kiwi the Sloth, Liam Newman, Sky Harbor, Caleb Dougal, Nina Smith, Nico Kyle, Rafael Rodriguez, The Ginger Bros, Aaron Stormcrow, Talon Karlik, Daniel Polson, Trace Miles, and Corey Kenshin. Thank you guys so much for supporting me, and if you guys would like to join them on the list of people's names I mispronounce, you can always do so at patreon.com/MrCreepyPasta, as well as all those fine people in the description down below who help support this channel and keep the lights on and give treats to Hylas and Hercules. You guys, as always, are the real MVPs, and I love and appreciate every single one of you who support there or just support anywhere by watching and subbing. So good night, everybody, and sweet dreams.